What's up, CAD adjusters? Today I'm going to go through the process that I use when I'm reviewing files so that you can see the process from start to finish and kind of get an idea of why, when you get a file sent back to you, kind of what we're looking at, and also to help you guys when you do turn your files in or when you're reviewing your files on your own before you turn them in, that you're checking all these things off, which will reduce your chances of getting a file kicked back to you. So let's go ahead and get started. What I do is, after I open the claims, I start on the Client Policy tab. What I'm looking for here is I'm going to double check the policy form, the deductible, and then I'm going to take a look at the endorsements and the priors. And in this case, he's got an endorsement here, this endorse END 596A, which is actual cash value wood roof surface loss settlement endorsement, which means that if he has a wood roof on the house, then he will not have replacement cost. And this is an important endorsement, and the adjuster, when they do this file, needs to have addressed that and made sure that if there's wood shake or wood shingles, that they are not, the depreciation that's taken on those is not recoverable. Also double checking the prior claims. It looks like there's a prior claim from 2008. This is a claim from 2014. The carrier gave us directions that any claim that is within 3 years of the current date of loss, that we need to address it in our diary. This one's outside of that by about 3 years, so it's 6 years outside of that. So I don't expect to see this prior loss addressed in the activity diary. If it is, that's great. If not, I'm not going to send it back for that. And then everything else is older. So, and then the next thing I do is I jump over to the notes and I just quickly scroll through, and just to make sure that there aren't any other issues, or that there aren't any customer service issues, or there aren't any special circumstances that I need to take a look at. Also, this tells me if this is, I can see right away if this one's a supplement or not by looking in the notes, because it'll have multiple adjusters assigned to it, and it'll have some language in there associated with supplements. This one has nothing. The next thing I do is I jump over to the Photos tab here in Exact Analysis, and I'm going to select Show All on these photos, and then I'm just going to kind of scan through and make sure that we're seeing front of risk photo. I want to see diagrams. If there's no sketch attached to the file, there's the roof diagram. Some damage to the gutters on the front. We're looking at seeing photos, overview photos of the elevations and personal property here, and then of course the hail damage to the shingles. These photos are completely out of order. However, the photo report PDF that was uploaded from Xactimate has the photos in the correct order. I'm not going to show you that to you guys because it's pretty self-explanatory. But we've got everything in here. We've got the fence, we got the deck got beat up pretty bad, content stuff. There's my layers. I don't know if there's ice and water. It looks like there's ice and water shield on that one. There's ridge vent up there, you can see, and interior damage. Got the pitch. Everything's in there, so we're good to go on that. And then the next thing I do after that is I jump into the Documents tab, and I'm going to pull up the estimate, and I'm going to run through the estimate start to finish. So I want to take a look at, make sure he's got the right deductible on there that we noted on the Client Policy tab in Exact Analysis, and that it's in there. I'm not seeing any non-recoverable depreciation here, which makes me wonder if the adjuster screwed this up. I want to double check here that we have the right price list, and I'm jumping into here, and I'm going to take a look here, and it looks like the roof is composition. And if we recall, going back to our photos, those shingles are comp, they're not wood. So these guys replaced the roof, and the roof coverings, ACV roof coverings endorsement was never removed. So it's going to be a non-issue on this claim. So good to go there. We want to make sure when I'm looking at this that we have things that should be replaced only, like the drip edge and turtle vents and things like that, that when they go to tear off the roof, they're just going to shovel all that stuff straight off. I don't want to see a remove line item for those items in here because we don't have extra labor to remove drip edge when it's just going to come off with the shingles, everything's good to go there. And then real quick, I'm also looking to make sure that the depreciation note matches the depreciation taken on the line items on all these. And when I go down to the gutters, the carrier in this case wanted us to break out each elevation in a note and say how many gutters and downspouts, linear feet of each on each side. So I had a little a macro set up for this on my gutter macro. The note's set up already like this, and I just punched these numbers in. And again, also checking that the notes are complete and that they have that the depreciation in the note matches the depreciation in the line items. And then same thing on the siding. Looks like we have a repair on the siding. We had some hardboard siding that got chipped, and then we're probably going to paint, I'm guessing. Yep. So painting on the left side of the house, no other paint damage found to the rest of the house. And then I've got my depreciation note in there, 7%. And that looks good to go. And then on the deck, same deal. Double checking the note and the line items. I'm not looking too deep into these line items. I'm not going to try to adjust the claim from the desk. I'm not going to try and second guess what the adjuster was doing when he or she wrote the estimate. But if there's things that are errors that you wouldn't do, for example, on the roof, paying for remove and replace of drip edge, then that's going to get sent back because that's incorrect. But that's not like second guessing what the adjuster is doing. So in this case, we've got some 2x4s and things like that were damaged, and the adjuster's taking care of those. And so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time looking deeply into the estimate like this. And then we have some interior damage to the ceiling, and in this case, double checking, we repaired the ceiling, and I guess we replaced the whole popcorn ceiling. There is not a note in there. I may or may not, if that's the only thing that's wrong with it, I probably won't send it back just for not mentioning the depreciation in the note, because we already have other paint line items in here that kind of go over what that is. And I don't know, that's a little bit of a gray area. If a file reviewer is super strict, they would say you need to have a note that matches the depreciation on the popcorn texture on the ceiling. But personally, I probably wouldn't send it back for that if that was the only thing. If there was 2 or 3 or 4 other things, then I would pop that on there and say, just, also add a note to this. So keep in mind that your corrections can snowball in that way. 1 or 2 little things like that, they might not say anything about, but then if you had one big thing in there that they have to send the file back for, then they're going to pop those other 2 or 3 little tiny things on there. And so you're going to have a whole bunch of corrections. So you got to make sure that when you are reviewing your own file before you send it up, being your own quality control, that you catch all of these little things so that they don't get sent back for dumb stuff. On the personal property stuff, I'm just double checking that the adjuster has kind of put in here where he got the pricing and says Sears.com, which is fine. And then the next thing I do is I'm going to click on the claim summary, which in this case they call it the vendor invoice report. And when I go through this one, I want to make sure that the claim summary total, which is $19,156.66, matches the grand total on the estimate, which is $19,156.66, because the claim is paid based on this claim summary sheet, and if the estimate and the claim summary don't match, then the customer is not going to get paid the correct amount. And this one will get caught. This kind of thing gets caught by the carrier, and they'll send it all the way back and make a big deal out of it, like we should have caught that or whatever. So catch this kind of thing. It's one of the first things I check is whether or not those totals match. So you gotta make sure that matches before you send the file up. And in this case, also, I'm making sure that the coverages are correct and the peril codes, and that the lien holder shows up correctly. And then I scroll down, and this is all in one document with this particular carrier. I scroll down, the invoice is included with the claim summary, as well as a damage evaluation and depreciation form for the roof. But on the invoice, I'm just double checking that the adjuster's got his name on there, that the managed fees and the exact made up the fees are correct, and that we've got a 2-story charge if that's reflected correctly. If the house is 2-story and it required 2-story access, I want to make sure that the adjuster gets paid for that. So he's got a 2-story charge. It wasn't steep. We saw that was a 612. And then also interior damage, he gets to bill for that as well. If I'm seeing these things checked off, if I've got steep charges on there and I don't have there's no picture of a pitch gauge, I am absolutely going to send it back, because if you have to show that if we're billing the carrier steep, they're going to want to see that it was actually steep, and a photo of the pitch gauge is required anyway. Same thing with 2-story. If you've got a 1-story house that has a 2-story section, but you can walk up onto it easily, I'm going to send that back and tell you to take this out. And if that's in the estimate, I'm going to tell you to take it out, because if the roof is accessible from the first floor, the whole entire roof, then there's no 2 stories allowed on those. So I'm double checking for those things, and just to make sure that the adjuster is getting paid everything he should be and isn't adding things that he shouldn't. And then finally, on here we have a damage evaluation and depreciation form with carriers. Some carriers may not require this at all. Other carriers are going to have an Excel spreadsheet that you have to upload to the file. This carrier has a threshold of 50%, and they want us to use this form to show that we were able to get the total amount of the damaged area is more than 50% on the roof. And that's why we have to do this sheet. And then the next thing I pop up is the activity report. I just want to make sure that we basically need to see a note for everything that's done. And in this case, what I'm looking for is that there's a contact for the insured, and then we have a note upon the inspection, which goes over the results of the inspection and what we found, and also that we've noted or addressed salvage, subrogation, and endorsements, which he's saying there's none here, which is correct, because there was not a wood shingle roof. There's no relevant priors. This adjuster, which was me, completed the estimate on site and explained everything on site. If I don't find any errors, I'm going to go ahead and approve it, and it will go through the carrier QA, or the carrier file review process. And a lot of times the carriers are going to find little things and send files back down to the adjuster to fix that they don't like. If I do find errors, then I'm going to make a list of them and send them back in an email and send it back through Exact Analysis into Xactimate. So it'll show up in Xactimate in the dashboard that you've got a returned file, and that corrections are required. If you have 2 or 3 or 4 corrections, that you address all of the corrections and then make sure all the totals match up again before we're sending the file back up. For some reason, there are adjusters out there, I don't know why they do this, and it doesn't seem to matter how many times you tell them not to do this. They will take the first correction, correct it, and then even though there's 3 other corrections left on there, and then they'll send the file back up. And then I still have to re-review and double check that all the corrections were made. I see that the first correction on my list was made, but the other 3 weren't. I have to send the file back and say, hey, please address these other 3 corrections. They will take the next correction and do that correction and then send the file back up, leaving the other 2 corrections. And I have honestly no idea why this happens. I'll call a guy at the second time. I'll say, listen, I need you to correct all 4 of these things, not just one at a time, because I have to re-review your file. I have to redo the work that I originally did. So basically, you have to review. Whenever you send a file back for corrections, you have to review it twice, is what I'm getting at. So help us out and address all of the corrections, make sure everything looks good and that you're satisfied, and that if you were standing up in front of the judge or the insured or whoever, or the manager at the carrier and handing them the file, it should be proud to say, this is a good file, and I did a good thorough job with it and everything looks good with it. Be sure that you do that before you send the files up. You'll have far fewer files sent back to you for corrections. which is, you know, it slows you down. Every time you have to address a correction, it can take anywhere from 5 minutes to an hour to fix stuff. It's like having to redo the whole claim sometimes. So it's very, very important that you guys double check, spend 5 extra minutes just to run through everything, just to skim over the documents, the estimate, make sure all the numbers match up. Your storm will go a lot faster, a lot smoother, and I think you'll make more money because you'll be spending less time doing corrections. And if your production's higher, then they're going to give people who produce more claims. So that's pretty much all I have for you guys. If you have any questions or anything, obviously you can drop them in the comments below. Otherwise, have a great storm, guys.